Joining us live is the National Senator Matt Canavan. Matt, good morning. Good to see you again. So it's almost a lock that the RBA will lift rates today. So that will be the 9th time in a row, despite that pause in January. Your thoughts on where that is this morning and the cost crunch that's only going to get harder for folks?
Well, we've got to get inflation under control, Peter, and the inflation number came in at 7.8% just the other week, so still at very, very high levels. And obviously it's going to be very, very tough for lots of households on mortgages with interest rates going up. But if the RBA doesn't make the tough decisions now, there'll be tougher times ahead. We have to get that inflation number down. It's really, really bad. It's tough for people. Real wages are now declining. They have almost for a year now. In the forecasts are even the RBA forecasts that real wages are possibly not going to increase for 3 years in total. So it is very tough for people, but as I say, tough decisions have to be made. I just hope the government as well shows some spine. Getting a lot of inconsistent messages from this Labor government. Today we read they do want spending discipline. They want to offset new spending measures, the things you should basically be doing in government. When just a couple of weeks ago, Jim Chalmers said he wanted to remake capitalism, and it's almost like he was going to open the spigots to new amounts of social spending left, right and centre. So it would be a lot better for the markets and for inflation if the government could be consistent here and show some resolve to get inflation under control.
Well, the government, quite rightly points to a global story, but locally its policies, i.e. energy, need time to come through. Does that stand?
Well, the government now has made 2 promises to cut your power bills, and I suppose your viewers, Peter, can make their own judgment. Do you think your power bills, or do you see them going down? I mean, I just got mine. My wife and I got ours. It went up $300 before the last election. The government said they'd cut my power bills, your power bills, by almost $300.
But again, it needs time because it's part of a global story.
Well, that's not what they promised. That's not what they promised. And of course, there are global factors here. But there's a lot that's going on locally. In fact, the respected energy market analyst Energy Quest last week told our Senate cost of living inquiry that in their view, the Ukraine war is only worth about 1% of the price increases we're seeing. When did gas prices go up last year? It wasn't after the Ukraine war here in Australian gas prices, I should say. The Australian gas prices went up when we had an electricity shortage in the mid-year in June. It was wholly and solely domestic because we haven't been investing enough in reliable power. Now we face this winter exactly the same risk. If it's cold and not particularly sunny, we will again have a crunch in the electricity system, especially after the Liddell coal-fired power station shuts. And the government's got to get serious here about bringing on more supply. That's the only way to bring electricity prices down over the long term.
Do you support subsidies for energy bills for low-income earners come budget time?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we have to help out people on lower incomes at these sort of times, and the opposition said last year that we weren't against the energy price relief. The government, in a sneaky way, tried to merge all of their socialist price cap legislation with that energy price relief. So I think some relief has to be given to people on lower incomes here. The problem is, where is that relief? The government called us back for an emergency sitting just before Christmas. They said this was an emergency. We're now almost 2 months on since that legislation passed the Parliament, and we don't even have the details yet, Peter, about where it's $1.5 billion from the federal government, $1.5 billion from the state. Where is this $3 billion worth of energy price relief? I mean, people are hurting now. Why isn't that rolling out right now? It seems to me that the government is keeping its powder dry because it wants to come out with a big splash in its budget. Well, I don't think it's fair for poorer families in this country to have to wait for the government's timeline of a May budget. They need that relief now. The money has been appropriated. It's passed the Parliament. It should be heading out the door this week.
Just finally, let's go to Lydia Thorpe, now independent. She's left the Greens. Do you see an opportunity there now that she's an independent, Matt?
Well, it certainly makes the Senate more interesting. The government can no longer, with the Greens, their partners in the Greens, the Labor and the Greens can't block things on their own. I suppose we'll wait to see on Lydia. I just think it's such a shame and a tragedy that these left-wing parties, the Labor Party and the Greens, they never seem to be able to welcome a diverse opinion, a different view. If you have a different view in the Labor Party or the Greens, you seem to get kicked out. And I don't know what happened with Lydia here, but Why does she have to leave? She's got a different view than her Greens colleagues. I mean, I have different views than my own colleagues, and I express that sometimes on your show, Peter. I express that on the floor of Parliament, my votes. But guess what? After it all, we can all have a beer and get along, and we still share common principles and values. So I just think it would be much better if the Labor Party and the Greens allowed more freedom to their members, because who knows, there are probably a lot more members of the Labor and Greens parties who share Lydia's views on The Voice, but their voices are suppressed through the authoritarian approach to politics taken by the Labor and Greens parties.
We are out of time. Matt Canavan, as always, appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Peter.